Nathan.
Yes, Joel.
People are such a burden.
Yes, Joel.
I just wish there was some way we could devise to benefit from the financial contributions and the authority that comes from influencing people without having to interact with and, worse, relate with them. Ugh.
Joel, one thing I've tried, and it works some of the time, is when they get in your face, they want wisdom, whatever. You know, they come up and I just go, do you have a donation for your God's temple at this time? If I don't get the money, at least they leave me alone, and everyone around them who doesn't want to donate suddenly disappears.
You dirty dog. I just hate people.
Yes.
After all, religion is all about power and control.
Yes. Yes, Joel, it is. Thanks to our ancestors.
I also hate the Romans. How dare they take away our political authority?
Scum!
Though I don't blame them for wanting it, and I somewhat admire their harsher control tactics.
How they get their money.
Crucify the rebels naked on a public road. That's one way to show the people who's boss.
You're so right.
Oh, Nathan, is that a Sadducee?
It is.
Ugh, I just hate the Sadducees.
Mindless, mindless, mindless.
How stupid does one have to be to deny the existence of angels and the afterlife?
I'm going to turn to dust and I'm going to die. Da, 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 da.
How much of a moron does one have to be to deny the existence of the supernatural world?
Right there.
And how could we ever control someone who doesn't think exactly the same as we do?
Well, look where we are, look where they are. We have many, they have few, says it all.
Absolutely. And we have stepped on quite a few little heads to promote ourselves to the positions of religious authority that we so enjoy today.
It was all worth it.
I quite agree with you. I'm actually quite proud of all the choices we've made. The ends do, after all, justify the means.
Absolutely.
As the high priest often says, differences of opinion will not be tolerated.
And they won't be.
Speaking of differences of opinion, what of that so-called Rabbi Jesus and his dirty, ragtag bunch of disciples?
I've heard he gives away a lot of what he takes in. When they find out he's a phony, he's broke the next day.
How stupid do you have to be? The illegitimate son of a carpenter with little to no religious education, how much more disqualified could one get?
Not much.
And have you seen their disgusting religious practices? They don't even wash their hands before eating.
Disgusting!
No regard at all for our ceremonial washings.
It's If that doesn't tell you he's not connected with God, I don't know what else. I mean, how many commandments has this man broken?
So true. Healing people on the Sabbath?
Yeah. If ever, I mean, these people will quit following him any day now. It's just, I don't know they're just so dumb. They just don't get it.
Couldn't agree more. Remember the time that he looked at the lame man and said, "Rise up and walk, take up your bed, your mat, and walk on the Sabbath"? Do they not know that we have prescribed the exact number of steps that can be taken on the Sabbath?
I can get anybody to lay down on the ground and get up for me. So, I mean,
True.
But on the Sabbath, you're right, brother. I mean, it's just unbelievable, the heretic that he is. And yet people follow him.
They have no regard at all for our religious practices and observances.
No, they don't.
I believe this Jesus will come to the same swift and painful end as all the messiahs and free-thinking spiritual teachers who've gone before him have, who dared to question our religious authority.
All throughout history, there have been those who have manipulated, misused, used, and abused other people, often in the name of God or religion. And the Pharisees were just one such a group. So can I ask, are we more like the Pharisees, the religious Pharisees of Jesus' day? Or are we more like Jesus' early followers? You know, the greatest man who ever lived, he never had any paid staff, yet they called him a master. He had no degrees, but they called him a teacher. He didn't have any medicine, but he was called the healer. He didn't have any earthly armies, but kings feared him. He didn't commit any crimes, but they crucified him. They buried him in a tomb, but he's alive and well today. Though he didn't win any military battles in this world, he conquered this world. You know, Jesus, he made a global impact, though his first 30 years were lived in total obscurity. No one even knew who he was. And then he died before he was 34. He didn't build a building. He didn't run for any offices. He didn't conquer any land. He wasn't even LinkedIn. He didn't have any tweets. He didn't have any popular YouTube channels. He wasn't even liked or friended on Facebook. I mean, imagine that. You know, when we step out in faith, when we do things that are not normal, dare to step outside the box, color outside the lines, live like Jesus lived, where in his day it was not acceptable for you to even come close to a leper, but where Jesus comes in and he rushes in and he takes this guy in and he says, "Be clean." Where he goes to the prostitutes, where he goes to the adulterers, and he speaks a message of forgiveness. He takes them in. Or like the tax collectors, the rich people, the thieves, he preaches a message of forgiveness, of hope. Now that was way outside of the cultural norm of that day. Talk about stepping outside the box. Well, when we dare to step outside the box, to take a step of faith, to love the least of these, to reach out to the one who's in front of us, to the lady in front of us at the checkout who looks like she's having a rough day, to dare to talk to the person who's playing with their kid at the swing set who just may be contemplating suicide? If we dare to reach down into the slums of what we call culturally unacceptable people, if we dare to reach those people like Jesus did, there's going to be risk. There will be a cost. We're going to probably ruffle some feathers and, possibly upset some religious establishments of what's considered okay and not okay. But isn't it worth it? It is so worth it. It is so worth it to obey our commanding officer, Jesus, the author and the finisher of our faith, to obey him, to walk in his step where he leads. Isn't it worth it? Isn't it worth it to reach those people who have never heard the gospel, who have never received the message and forgiveness of Jesus, who have never even experienced love, only what this world has to offer, who have never actually had a taste of life, joy, peace, any of those things? Isn't it worth it to put our life, our reputation, our names on the line for the sake of those who are lost and without us may never have an opportunity to know their Father, Abba, Papa, God? At the time of Jesus and his early followers, there were people who were popular. Different big shots in there. The Caesars. You'd hear names like Nero or Herod. Funny thing is, today, those names are used for casinos, for pizza, dogs, stuff like that. Jesus didn't have any biological kids, but his followers, names like Peter, James, Matthew, Mary, Paul, Stephen, the list goes on. Those names are honored. People who walked the way Jesus did. Their names are honored, and we give them those names to our kids. So, my question to you is, are we just a bunch of religious Pharisees? Just wearing different clothes and, living in a different time? Are we like them, where we look at them based off of past failures, based off of unforgiveness, maybe even pride in ourselves? Are we looking at people with prejudice, with pride, with those things? Or are we real, true followers of Jesus?